Working at a psychiatric hospital, I thought I had seen everything. We had a delusional old lady that thought she was Cleopatra for the last 30 years, and absolutely freaked out if you didn't tell her what Mark Antony was doing. A man that tried to kill his younger brother, drowning him in holy water because he claimed the child was the Antichrist. A teenage boy that firmly believed to be a lawnmower. He never talked, only made whirring noises. But all of this looked like child's play when I was assigned to Amanda Jameson. Amanda was only 28. Her crooked figure made me uneasy, but if you looked at her normal parts, you could see she used to be a girl-next-door type of beauty. She was smart too. When all of this started, Amanda was enrolled in a good university. Others had been assigned to her before, and I had their notes, but I still had to interview Amanda and make her repeat her story to me. Every single nurse and psychiatrist that took care of her had abruptly quit the job. I knew one of the nurses, Jocelyn, and called to know what was going on after she stopped showing up at work. After I insisted a lot, her sister simply told me Jocelyn had decided to move to another state and wouldn't talk to anyone she knew before. I sighed deeply and entered Amanda's room. She was fidgeting with a small plastic bear holding a red heart. "Hello, Amanda. I'm Dr. Hudson, but you can call me Lena. How are you today?" "Hello, Dr. Lena Hudson," she answered emotionlessly. She was still scratching her left eye, or what was left of it. "Same as always, thank you." The file said Amanda suffered from an unknown psychosis, but at first glance she seemed in full possession of her mental faculties. I would do my best to not let it fool me, but she showed no signs of insanity whatsoever. It was an impression hard to shake off. "I know you've been through this before, but bear with me. I need you to tell me how it all started, if you please." "I was 20 and living with my college boyfriend," she said, still in a neutral, lucid tone. "I always had allergies, so I was no stranger to feeling my eyes itchy. But it wasn't even spring, and it seemed abnormal to me. You know when you come out of the shower and find loose strands of hair everywhere on your body? It was something like that." "Yes, I know the feeling. It's really annoying," I agreed. "I felt a really thin and long hair inside my left eye. I spent some good minutes in front of the mirror, trying to find it and grab it, but I couldn't. I couldn't," she repeated, sounding a little distressed. "Now my eyes were not only itchy, they were also very red and sore. Fortunately, Henry's older brother is an ophthalmologist. Henry was my boyfriend back then," she explained. "I told him I really needed to have my eye examined because something was wrong with it. He started to say I just needed to stop scratching it and use some eye drops, but I was physically unable to stop. The itching was so bad. When Henry saw how swollen my eye was, he called his brother, Dr. E, and took me there. As expected by Henry, Dr. E said nothing was wrong with me. He said there was nothing inside my eye, and that I just had a bad case of allergies. I don't blame Dr. E. He examined me thoroughly and gave me a corticosteroid eye ointment. I know that usually it would be enough, but it wasn't the case for me. He's really nice, you know. He still visits me sometimes and says he's sorry he couldn't help me." "I'm glad to hear it, Amanda," I sympathetically remarked. "Anyway, that night is hell. I can't sleep. I put in the ointment, but I really have to scratch, and I really need to grab the hair. It bothers me so much, so much. It's hard to describe how desperate the feeling was. So I do it and take all the eye medicine out, so I have to put it in again. But I also need to scratch again. I know what it sounds like. I'm childish. I have no self-control. It's just a normal allergic reaction. I just have to stop scratching it and get some sleep, and things will be fine. But they won't. They won't. I used to have a strong mind. But this is so bad. It's so bad I want to die. I couldn't sleep at all that night, and the itching was unbearable. My eye was so sore and swollen I couldn't even open it. The other eye was completely normal. Why, Doctor? Why only one of my eyes was this bad? I don't think you're childish, Amanda, I replied with sincerity. I had no other answer to offer. I make it through the night somehow, but every second is torture. I can't stress this enough. It's pure hell. She flinches, remembering the sensation. Henry leaves for his classes. I'm desperate for the itch to stop. I do something dumb. Something I know is dumb, but I don't mind, because the only important thing is getting rid of the invisible hair. I grab tweezers and try to pick the hair inside my eye with them. I do my best to suppress an ouch. It hurts so much. It hurts so much, Doctor. I'm starting to go out of my mind. My sclera is completely fucked up. The whole area of my left eye is bleeding, and I'm probably going permanently blind by now. But I just want it to stop. I just want it to stop. I just want it to stop. She makes a long pause. I understand you, Amanda. What happened after you tried to use the tweezers? After 2 hours of agony using the tweezers, for a glorious moment, I feel like I was able to pull the hair off. I never felt this relieved in my life, but then I become paranoid. I can't let it happen again. It will kill me. It will drive me insane. She gestured around the room with bitter irony. You know it did. You're not necessarily insane, Amanda. You just have an unknown problem, and you're safer here. She gave me a half smile, but unfortunately it was creepier than anything I ever saw. I did my best not to show how her smiling face terrified me. Thank you, Doctor. Anyway, once again I was being irrational and I knew it. But being rational didn't matter at the time. I only cared about not feeling that terrible agony again. So I got rid of all the hairs on my body. Protecting my eyes, I waxed myself. I went bald. I removed my eyebrows and even my eyelashes. I looked like a freaky monster, but it wasn't important to me. Then, I cleaned the house like a crazy person. I vacuumed everything. I threw a lot of clothes and my stuff away, and I refused to let Henry get in unless he had zero hair on his body too. Did he comply? No. I don't think anyone in their right mind would do it. Poor Henry went to stay at his friend's house and called my parents. They were surprised because I had no history of mental issues, nor did anyone in my family. She bit her horrendously deformed lip. Shortly after, Henry gave up on getting in, and I realised just getting rid of all the hair wasn't enough. I had to make sure it couldn't enter. She paused. I see. So I got my sewing kit and stitched my eye. I shivered. When my family found me, I looked awful. My whole body was naked in every sense. I refused to wear clothes because they have tiny hairs. Even now, I only wear seamless plastic stuff. My eye was awfully swollen and stitched. I screamed the whole time that they had to get rid of all their hairs to be in contact with me. I'll admit to you I was a mess, Doctor. It was the first time I was put here. You're being very brave to share your story, and your point of view is very reasonable, Amanda, I encouraged her. Thank you, Doctor. After that, I was put to sleep most of the time. It was a relief, because I knew I wasn't in my right mind, and, despite my relief, I was still feeling paranoid. After a few days, my fear proved to be true, and it simply came back. It came back, Doctor. The invisible hair, the unbearable itching that literally drove me insane. It was back inside my stitched eye. How did it get in, Doctor? Deep down, I knew it would. I knew I wouldn't really be rid of it. I knew things would never be normal anymore. She sighed. But I wasn't ready to feel that desperation again. I silently read the notes from her first psychiatrist regarding this moment. Amanda Jameson had let her nails grow. I felt so bad for her and was naive to allow it, thinking she simply wanted to feel feminine after getting rid of her hair and eyelashes in a psychotic fit. She was so normal after that, so sane that I got carried away. But she wanted to hurt herself. She mercilessly dug her long nails between the stitches, clawing at her own cornea, making blood and eye goo come out. Her alien, hairless figure made it creepier. I'll definitely recommend completely restraining her if the nurses hadn't done it by now. I had to be restrained because I was hurting myself. Now, that was the 9th circle of hell. If I thought before that things couldn't get worse, I was wrong. The itching was awful when I could scratch it, but I can't even put into words how painful to my body and mind it was to not be able to scratch. I thought of suicide the whole time I had to be awake, so I requested to have someone to talk to all the time. Being tied to the bed, it was the only thing that could bring me some relief and distraction. It was a very reasonable request, so the clinic allowed it. I was assigned a very sweet nurse, Samira. She would tell me entertaining stories. It was like the book 1001 Nights. One day she asked what happened to me and I told her. She was horrified and ended up quitting after that, but I'd piqued the interest of all the other nurses. One after another, I told them my story so far. This went on for weeks, since I would only be awake for like 4 hours a day. These hours were a nightmare, but having people to chat with really made it less unbearable. I read the notes of her second doctor. As abruptly as it started, Amanda Jameson's unknown psychosis seemed to go away. Being restrained is very difficult, and we try to avoid it, but it was crucial for her physical well-being. Instead of falling into a depression, the patient fought it, asking to be surrounded by people and showing positive behaviours. This young woman had a strong and fascinating mind, but I digress. There is strong evidence that her mysterious condition subsided, or is cured, so I'll recommend the hospital to release her, and have the family to keep her under constant but discreet surveillance. Somehow, after a few weeks, the itch completely disappeared. They still kept me here for a while, but I didn't need to be restrained. It was the first time in a whole year that I felt normal. My hair was growing back, and even the paranoia that it would happen again was under control. I wanted to enjoy it while the peace lasted, you know. The first thing I did was break up with Henry, to set him free. He didn't have the courage to do it while I was here. The poor guy was a mess, but still trying to be a gentleman. I liked him, but I wanted to make sure that this thing was really gone before I could think about dating. It just wasn't a priority. I didn't feel ill, but I was still a mess physically and wasn't ready to go back to college, so I moved back with my parents. Things were fine at first. They were so good to me. They got rid of every piece of furniture or decoration with hairs in the whole house. They even rehomed their poor dog to my sister's house for my sake. They didn't get rid of their own body hairs, of course, but bought hazmat suits to use whenever they were around me. I insisted I was fine and that it wasn't necessary as long as they wore aprons and caps, like you're wearing now, but they didn't want to trigger anything bad in me. It was the first time I realised how they must have been suffering because of my condition. She wiped a tear from her good eye. This is important, Amanda. You can't avoid a mental illness, but thinking about how hard it is on your loved ones will give you the strength to fight it as best you can. I didn't feel the hair inside my eye for months. I felt good enough to let my hair grow as long as my mother washed it for me using a plastic barrier to keep it from falling in my face, and most of the time I kept it inside a cap. But it felt good. It felt like preparing to have a completely normal life again. For the first time since I was back, my parents felt confident enough to leave me unsupervised. It was their wedding anniversary, and they deserved to have a good time. They went to a fancy restaurant. It would be just for a few hours. I could be fine. I knew I could. But, of course, that's exactly when it came back. I don't know if it was because I was free for months, but the agony felt worse than before. It was like I now had many hairs instead of a single strand. I scratched and screamed and cried, but nothing was ever enough. Finally, I came to the conclusion that the only way to get rid of it is by getting rid of my eye itself. I sighed and read the third doctor's notes. Amanda Jameson was somewhat of a legend to me, but she's real, and she's back. She was left alone at home for a few hours and burned half her face with acid. The older nurses said she was monstrous when she didn't have a single hair on her body, but I bet nothing can compare to what she looks like now. The left side of her body was better off gone than how it is now. A fleshy, infectious wound, showing more muscle than should be inside than anything else. There's no skin anymore. Part of the flesh of her nose is missing, and her mouth looks like the worst cleft lip I have ever seen. It's like the left portion of her mouth was liquefied, and it was incorrectly reassembled all over the lower portion of her face. In time, Amanda will be left with nasty scars and a very deformed chin. But miraculously, she can still speak, breathe, and eat. I don't know if this fact makes her less or more bizarre. The eye. I don't know how to describe what's left of the eye. The surgeon had to open the stitched mass of gore and remove it, but the first thing she said when she woke up was that she can still feel the invisible hairs moving inside her empty socket. And she'll still scratch it. This doctor was right about the nasty scars. It's very difficult to look at her, but as her doctor, I have to. Nowadays, Amanda at least has hair. She concluded that the invisible hairs are not actual hair, so it doesn't matter if she gets rid of her hair or not. But, worried about making her condition even worse, the clinic forbids the employees to have contact with her without a plastic apron and cap, and she can't wear clothes with hairs, have regular sheets, or get plush dolls either. According to the other doctor's notes, Amanda's condition has been on and off for the past few years. Sometimes she'll scratch her eye for months straight. She isn't being restrained anymore because, well, there's nothing left to damage. Her eye is completely gone. Sometimes she has a few weeks' break from the devastating itch. But I don't want to leave this place. I know it's a matter of time until the itch is back, and I'm scared of what I'll do. I don't want to make my parents even more miserable. I want to keep living and hope that someday someone will discover what this is and maybe even a cure, she said. I noticed that she hadn't been scratching her eye, and I use this term very loosely, for the last 40 minutes. Is the itching gone for now, Amanda? Yes, doctor, it seems so, she smiled. I wish I could beg her to never smile again. The sight made me immediately want to finish the session to throw up. It's been 2 weeks since I've been assigned to Amanda, and she's in one of her good, itch-free periods. Besides her deformed looks, she's a very easygoing patient. It was so hard typing this because I had to stop to scratch my eye the whole time. But I feel like talking to other people will help, at least for a while. My left eye is unbearably itchy right now. What about yours?